if they can compare what the experience that I went through was similar to what has been shared with us. Kate was called Waity Katie, waiting to marry William. While I imagine that was really hard, and I can't.
They tried to hide it. They fought back. They built an empire far from the palace walls. But now, it's all crumbling. Buckingham Palace just dropped a bombshell that nobody saw coming, releasing DNA proof about Archie and Lilibet that changes absolutely everything. Years of whispers, deleted photos, suspicious timelines, it all led to this moment. Harry and Meghan thought they escaped. They were wrong.
With that relationship and that control and the fear by the UK tabloids, it's a toxic environment. But I will always be there for him. I will always be there for my family.
What the palace just revealed doesn't just raise questions, it threatens to destroy the carefully constructed life they've built in California. The relationship between Prince Harry, Meghan Markle, and the British royal family has been strained for years now, but recent developments in 2026 have pushed things into entirely new territory. What started as whispers and speculation has now become something the palace can no longer ignore. After years of maintaining their characteristic silence on sensitive family matters, Buckingham Palace made an unprecedented move by releasing documentation connected to Archie and Lilibet Mountbatten Windsor. This wasn't a carefully worded statement or a subtle briefing to friendly journalists. This was actual evidence, the kind that doesn't just start conversations, but completely transforms them. To understand why this matters so much, you need to look at how we got here. The questions surrounding Meghan's pregnancies didn't appear overnight. They've been building since 2019, when Archie was born. At first, the speculation was quiet, confined mostly to online forums and royal watching communities. But as time went on and more inconsistencies emerged, what seemed like fringe theories began gaining traction among a wider audience. By the time Meghan was pregnant with her second child, these weren't just rumors anymore. They had become a persistent undercurrent that followed the couple everywhere. According to official records, Archie Harrison Mountbatten Windsor was born on May 6, 2019 at the Portland Hospital in London, On the surface, this seems straightforward enough, but the circumstances surrounding his birth raised questions that have never been fully answered. Initially, there were expectations of a home birth at Frogmore Cottage, where Harry and Meghan were living at the time. The Portland Hospital is several miles away from Frogmore, which made the location change itself noteworthy. But what really caught people's attention was the timeline. In Prince Harry's own memoir, he mentioned that within 2 hours of Archie's birth, he and Meghan were already back at Frogmore Cottage. For anyone familiar with childbirth and postpartum recovery, this seemed unusually fast. Most mothers, especially first-time mothers, spend considerably longer at the hospital after delivery. Medical professionals typically recommend at least several hours of observation, and many women stay overnight or longer. The idea that Meghan would give birth and be home within 2 hours struck many observers as highly unusual. Adding to the confusion, the palace announced that Meghan had gone into labour several hours after Archie had actually been born, according to the birth records. The sequence of events simply didn't line up in a way that made sense to people following the story. Once these discrepancies were noticed, they became impossible to ignore. Royal watchers began comparing notes, looking at timelines and trying to piece together what had actually happened. Then there was the matter of the public debut. When other senior royals have children, there's typically a carefully orchestrated photo opportunity within hours or, at most, a day after the birth. The public gets to see the new baby, the mother looks remarkably composed considering what she's just been through, and everyone moves on. With Archie, things were different. He wasn't shown publicly until more than 2 days after his birth. While Harry and Meghan certainly had the right to privacy, the delay was notable given royal tradition and public expectation. Another detail that fueled speculation was the birth certificate. Reports emerged that Archie's birth certificate had been amended several days after his birth. The changes involved how Meghan was listed on the document. While amendments to birth certificates aren't unheard of, in royal matters, every detail matters. People pay attention to documentation, to protocols, to the smallest variations from standard procedure. In this case, the amendment raised more questions than it answered. When Lilibet Diana was born in June 2021, the situation was entirely different, but somehow even more complicated. She was born in California at Santa Barbara Cottage Hospital after Harry and Meghan had already stepped back from royal duties and relocated to the United States. By this point, the relationship between the Sussexes and the palace had deteriorated significantly. Trust was broken on both sides. Every decision was scrutinized. Every statement was analyzed for hidden meanings. The lack of transparency only made people more suspicious. For months and eventually years, these questions hung in the air without any official response from either the palace or the Sussexes. Then, in mid-2025, Meghan appeared to address the speculation directly. On June the 4th, she posted a video on Instagram showing her and Harry in what appeared to be a hospital room. They were dancing together, and Meghan was visibly pregnant with a prominent baby bump. The video seemed designed to put the surrogacy rumours to rest once and for all. The message was clear. Look, here's proof that I was actually pregnant. But the video didn't have the effect Meghan probably hoped for. Instead of ending the speculation, it intensified it. Critics examined every frame of the footage. They questioned the appearance of the bump, its shape, its position, how it moved as she danced. Some people thought the video looked entirely natural. Others saw it as suspicious. Rather than settling the debate, the Instagrams post became yet another piece of evidence that people on both sides of the argument used to support their positions. This brings us to why the palace's recent action is so significant. Royal institutions don't operate on impulse. They're built on centuries of tradition, protocol, and extreme caution about public statements. For Buckingham Palace to release DNA-related documentation about two young children represents a massive departure from how they typically handle sensitive family matters. The fact that they did this suggests something serious is at stake. Something that couldn't be ignored or managed through the usual channels of silence and carefully worded non-responses. The implications go far beyond public relations or family drama. Under royal succession rules, an heir must be born of the body of a titled royal mother. This isn't just tradition or preference, it's a fundamental requirement that determines who can inherit titles and positions in the line of succession. If there's any legitimate question about whether this requirement was met, it calls into question not just public perception, but the actual legal status of the children involved. Both Archie and Lilibet currently hold positions in the line of succession. They're 6th and 7th in line to the British throne, respectively. They also hold royal titles, though the couple's use of these titles has been selective and somewhat controversial. But all of this depends on their status being beyond question. If the circumstances of their births don't meet the technical requirements set out in royal law and tradition, everything changes. That's what makes the palace's decision to release this documentation so important. They're not doing this casually or without serious deliberation. Whatever evidence they've made public, it represents a shift from their long-standing policy of never commenting on such matters. The silence that protected the situation for years has been broken, and once that happens, there's no going back to how things were before. The speculation surrounding Meghan's pregnancies didn't emerge from a single incident or one questionable moment. It built up gradually, piece by piece, as observers noticed details that seemed inconsistent or unusual. What made these observations particularly difficult to dismiss was that they came from multiple sources and involved different aspects of both pregnancies. People weren't just pointing to one strange moment and building a conspiracy around it. They were identifying a pattern, and patterns are much harder to explain away. When Meghan was pregnant with Archie, her public appearances became a focal point for speculation. Royal watchers noted that the size and shape of her baby bump seemed to change dramatically between appearances, sometimes in ways that didn't align with typical pregnancy progression. In some photos, the bump appeared quite large, while in others, taken around the same time, it seemed smaller or positioned differently. Supporters of Meghan argued this was perfectly normal, that pregnancy looks different on every woman and can appear different depending on clothing, posture, and camera angles. Critics saw something else entirely. There were moments during public appearances where observers claimed the bump appeared to shift position or change shape in ways that seemed inconsistent with a natural pregnancy. Videos and photographs were analysed frame by frame, with people on social media pointing out what they considered to be irregularities. Some of these observations were admittedly reaching, the kind of hyper-analysis that can make anything look suspicious if you're determined to find something wrong. But other observations were harder to dismiss, particularly when it came to the timeline inconsistencies and the unusual circumstances surrounding the births. One of the most frequently discussed aspects was how Meghan moved and carried herself during her pregnancies. Critics pointed out moments where she appeared to bend, squat, or move in ways that seemed unusual for someone in late-stage pregnancy. There were instances caught on camera where the shape or position of her baby bump appeared to change between appearances that were relatively close together. Supporters argued this was completely normal, that every pregnancy looks different, that clothes and camera angles can create illusions. Critics saw it as evidence that something wasn't quite right. The debate extended to fashion choices as well. Meghan often wore form-fitting clothes during her pregnancies, which some saw as a natural style preference, and others viewed as an attempt to make the pregnancies more visible and obvious. She was photographed cradling her bump in ways that some found endearing and others found performative. Every public appearance was dissected frame by frame. Every photograph was analysed and compared to previous appearances. The scrutiny was relentless and intensely personal. Online communities dedicated to royal watching became divided into camps. Some people defended Meghan absolutely, viewing any questioning of her pregnancies as rooted in racism, misogyny, or both. They pointed out that pregnant women come in all shapes and sizes, that every pregnancy is different, and that scrutinizing a woman's body in this way is fundamentally invasive and inappropriate. Others insisted they weren't being malicious, but were simply pointing out inconsistencies that deserved explanation. The debate became increasingly polarized, with little middle ground between the two sides. Some of the speculation focused on specific photographs and video footage from public appearances during both pregnancies. People compared images from different angles and different dates, looking for inconsistencies in size, shape, or position of the baby bump. Some observers claimed to see the bump appearing to shift or change in ways that seemed unnatural. Others pointed to moments where Meghan appeared to move with unusual ease for someone in late pregnancy. Every public appearance was analysed frame by frame, with people on social media picking apart details that might have gone unnoticed in a different context. The speculation wasn't limited to casual observers and tabloid readers. Some medical professionals weighed in, though carefully and often anonymously, about whether certain aspects of Meghan's public appearances aligned with typical pregnancy presentations. Others pointed out that every pregnancy is different, and that making judgments based on photographs and video footage is inherently unreliable. The debate took on a life of its own, with people on both sides convinced they had evidence supporting their position. What made the situation even more complicated was the couple's approach to privacy. Harry and Meghan have been vocal about their desire to protect their children from media scrutiny and public attention. This is completely understandable given Harry's own childhood experiences and the role media intrusion played in his mother's life and death. However, this desire for privacy created a tension with public expectations around royal births and royal children. The more private they kept things, the more some people suspected they had something to hide. The palace's traditional response to rumours and speculation has always been silence. They don't dignify gossip with responses, they don't issue denials for every story that circulates in the tabloids or online. This approach has served them well for generations. By refusing to engage, they avoid giving credibility to unfounded claims and maintain their dignity above the fray. But in this case, the silence had the opposite effect. Without any official clarification or denial, the speculation only grew stronger. Online communities dedicated to royal watching became increasingly convinced that something wasn't being disclosed. They compiled timelines, analysed photographs, compared Meghan's appearance during her pregnancies to other royal mothers, and documented every inconsistency they could find. Some of this analysis was thoughtful and measured. Much of it crossed into territory that was speculative at best and cruel at worst. But the core questions remained unanswered, which only gave the theories more oxygen. By early 2025, reports began circulating more widely that both Archie and Lilibet may have been born via surrogacy. These claims weren't based on a single smoking gun piece of evidence. Instead, they drew from a pattern of observations. The secretive nature of both births, the timelines that didn't quite add up, the unusual decisions about when and how to present the children publicly, the amended documentation, the lack of any clear, definitive statement from the palace shutting down the speculation. What made these claims particularly explosive wasn't just the surrogacy question itself, it was what surrogacy would mean under royal law. The rules governing succession are old and very specific. They were written in an era when surrogacy wasn't even a consideration, which means there's no clear precedent for how it would be handled. The requirement that an heir be born of the body of the royal parent isn't just symbolic, it's fundamental to how inheritance and succession work within the monarchy. Royal watchers and legal experts have debated this point extensively. If a child is born via surrogate, does that fulfill the requirement that they be born of the body of the royal parent? Some argue that modern reproductive technology should be accommodated within royal law. Others insist that the language is clear and has been understood the same way for centuries. The ambiguity creates a genuine legal and constitutional question, not just a matter of gossip or speculation. Throughout all of this, neither the palace nor the Sussexes provided clear, definitive answers to the questions being raised. Harry and Meghan's approach has generally been to ignore the speculation entirely or to offer indirect responses like the Instagram video. The palace, for its part, maintained its traditional position of never commenting on personal family matters, especially ones this sensitive. But silence, as it turns out, doesn't make questions disappear. In some cases, it makes them grow louder. The pattern of secrecy surrounding both births certainly didn't help matters. Royal births have traditionally been very public affairs, with established protocols and expectations. When those expectations aren't met, people notice. When timelines don't quite add up, people notice. When official statements seem to contradict documented facts, people definitely notice. And in the age of social media and instant communication, these observations don't stay contained. They spread, they evolve, they take on lives of their own. By early 2025, the claims about surrogacy weren't just whispered theories anymore. They had become part of mainstream discussion about the Sussexes. Multiple online communities were dedicated to analysing every photo, every public appearance, every statement for clues. Some of this was clearly motivated by hostility toward Meghan. Some of it came from genuine confusion about the contradictory information that had been made public. And some of it came from people who simply wanted answers to questions that seemed legitimate. The palace's standard response to this kind of speculation has always been silence. They don't dignify rumours with responses. They don't engage with conspiracy theories. They maintain a studied, deliberate distance from anything that might be considered undignified or beneath the institution's status. For decades, this approach worked reasonably well. Rumours would circulate, the palace would say nothing, and eventually people would move on to the next controversy. But this situation was different. The questions weren't going away. If anything, they were getting louder and more persistent. The longer the palace stayed silent, the more people assumed there must be something to hide. And the more Meghan and Harry tried to address the speculation on their own terms, the more fuel they seemed to add to the fire. The Instagram video that was supposed to settle things only made them worse. Every attempt at clarification seemed to create new questions rather than answering old ones. Part of what made this so difficult to resolve was the nature of the claims themselves. Surrogacy isn't illegal or even particularly unusual among wealthy families who struggle with fertility or pregnancy complications. Many people choose surrogacy for perfectly legitimate medical reasons. But within the specific context of the British monarchy, it matters in ways that go beyond the personal. Royal succession isn't just about biology in an abstract sense. It's about very specific legal requirements that have been in place for generations. The phrase "born of the body" isn't just poetic language. It's a legal standard that determines legitimacy within the royal succession. This standard exists because the monarchy itself is a hereditary institution. The entire system depends on clear, unambiguous lines of descent. Any uncertainty about whether that standard has been met creates problems that go far beyond hurt feelings or public relations challenges. It raises fundamental questions about legal status, inheritance rights, and the validity of titles. Throughout 2024 and into 2025, these questions continued to circulate online. Royal watching forums dissected every public appearance. People compared photographs from different stages of Meghan's pregnancies, looking for inconsistencies. Some pointed to moments where the baby bump appeared to change size or shape in ways that seemed unusual. Others noted differences in how Meghan carried herself or moved during public engagements. Every detail was examined, debated, and interpreted through the lens of the surrogacy theory. It's worth noting that surrogacy itself isn't scandalous or shameful. Many families use surrogates for various medical or personal reasons, and there's nothing inherently wrong with that choice. But within the context of royal succession, it matters enormously. If Archie and Lilibet were born via surrogate, they wouldn't meet the born of the body requirement. They could still be Harry and Meghan's children in every meaningful sense. They could still be loved, raised and cared for by their parents, but they wouldn't be eligible for the line of succession or the titles that come with it. The palace's traditional response to this kind of speculation has always been silence. They don't comment on private family matters. They don't engage with rumours or conspiracy theories. They maintain dignity through discretion, operating on the principle that responding to every accusation or question would be undignified and endless. This approach has served them well for decades, but it only works when silence doesn't become its own kind of answer. By 2025, the silence was no longer neutral. It had become conspicuous. People weren't just asking questions anymore. They were drawing conclusions from the lack of answers. The longer the palace remained quiet, the more suspicious their silence appeared. What started as fringe speculation was moving closer to mainstream discussion. Media outlets that had previously avoided the topic began covering it more openly. Royal commentators who had dismissed the theories started acknowledging that questions existed, even if they didn't endorse the most extreme versions of those questions. Meghan's Instagram video in June 2025 represented an attempt to break through that impasse. By showing herself visibly pregnant dancing with Harry in what appeared to be a hospital setting, she was offering visual proof to counter the speculation. The video was intimate and personal in a way that felt genuine. For many people, it was exactly the kind of evidence they needed to put the rumours to rest. But for others, it raised even more questions. Why now? Why through Instagram rather than official palace channels? And why did certain aspects of the video seem to some viewers staged or artificial? The problem with trying to disprove conspiracy theories is that evidence can always be reinterpreted to fit the theory. People who were already skeptical found reasons to remain skeptical. They questioned the authenticity of the bump. They analysed shadows and proportions. They compared the video to earlier photographs and found what they believed were inconsistencies. Instead of settling the debate, the video became another data point that each side used to support their existing position. This is the context in which the palace's 2026 decision must be understood. After years of questions, speculation, attempted clarifications, and ongoing controversy, something shifted. The institution that had refused to engage decided that engagement was necessary. The release of DNA-related documentation wasn't a casual choice or a response to social media pressure. It represented a fundamental change in strategy, driven by concerns that likely went far beyond public opinion. Whatever the palace released, and whatever it proves or disproves, the mere fact that they released anything at all tells us that the situation had reached a point where silence was no longer sustainable. The decision by Harry and Meghan to step back from royal duties in 2020 didn't happen in a vacuum. It was the culmination of tensions that had been building since before they were even married. While the public explanation focused heavily on media intrusion, mental health struggles, and the need for a more private life, sources close to the situation suggest there were other factors at play that were perhaps less sympathetic but equally important in understanding why the couple ultimately chose to leave. According to royal author Valentine Lowe, whose book provided extensive insight into the inner workings of the royal household. During this period, financial independence was a driving force behind the decision. The couple didn't just want distance from the press or breathing room from royal obligations. They wanted the freedom to earn money on their own terms, to build their own brand, and to pursue opportunities that the constraints of royal life simply wouldn't allow. This desire wasn't necessarily unreasonable. Meghan had built a successful career before meeting Harry. She was accustomed to earning her own income, making her own decisions, and controlling her own professional trajectory. The transition to royal life meant giving up all of that autonomy. Every decision had to be approved. Every appearance had to follow protocol. There was no room for personal business ventures or independent projects that might create conflicts of interest with royal responsibilities. The problem was that being a working royal comes with very specific rules. Members of the royal family who carry out official duties on behalf of the monarch cannot engage in commercial activities. They cannot sign endorsement deals. They cannot use their royal status to generate personal income. The reasoning behind this is straightforward enough. The monarchy's authority and legitimacy depend on being above commercial interests. Once royals start monetizing their positions, it raises questions about motives and creates potential conflicts between public duty and private profit. Behind closed doors, various compromise scenarios were apparently explored. One proposal involved the couple working as royals part-time, perhaps carving out a month or so each year to pursue personal projects. Another idea floated the possibility of them living mostly private lives while occasionally appearing for major royal engagements. On paper, these compromises might have seemed workable. In practice, they ran headlong into the fundamental rules governing royal behavior. The palace's position was clear and inflexible. There could be no half-in, half-out arrangement. Either you're a working royal who follows all the protocols and restrictions that come with that role, or you're a private citizen who happens to have royal connections. The middle ground that Harry and Meghan seemed to want simply wasn't available within the existing framework of how the monarchy operates. According to Lowe's account, once it became clear that there was no path to earning money freely while remaining working royals, the choice became inevitable. Staying meant accepting limitations that Meghan in particular found suffocating. Leaving meant giving up the support structure, security, and institutional backing of the royal family. But it also meant freedom to pursue whatever opportunities they wanted without seeking approval from palace officials. There was another dimension to the disagreement as well. Lowe's book suggests that the couple wanted the freedom to engage with American politics, something that is absolutely forbidden for working members of the British royal family. Political neutrality isn't just a preference for the monarchy, it's a constitutional requirement. The royal family maintains its position in part by staying scrupulously above partisan political debates. The final decision came from Queen Elizabeth herself. Despite whatever affection she may have had for Harry, she took the position that without full adherence to royal protocols and limitations, the couple could not continue as working royals. There would be no special arrangement, no unique compromise. When it became clear that Harry and Meghan wouldn't accept those terms, the separation became official. Once settled in California, the couple moved remarkably quickly to establish their new life. Financial independence wasn't some distant goal they were working toward gradually. It was immediate and aggressive. Within months, they had begun building an entirely new public identity, one rooted in media production and personal branding rather than royal duty and public service. The financial moves were dramatic. In 2020, shortly after stepping back from royal duties, Harry and Meghan signed what was reported to be a $100 million deal with Netflix. This wasn't a small independent project or a modest media venture, it was a massive commitment that positioned them as major players in the entertainment industry. Since that initial Netflix deal, Meghan has continued expanding her business footprint. She launched a lifestyle brand that draws on her previous work and personal interests. She revamped her podcast production after an initial venture with Spotify ended. She created a digital storefront designed to capitalize on her global visibility and influence. Each of these projects represents exactly the kind of commercial activity that would have been impossible as a working royal. Harry has pursued his own projects as well, including his memoir, Spare, which became one of the fastest-selling non-fiction books in history. The book provided an extraordinarily candid look at his life within the royal family, including details about private conversations, family conflicts, and personal struggles. For many readers, it was a fascinating and sympathetic portrait of someone trapped in an institution that didn't know how to accommodate him. For the royal family, it was a devastating breach of privacy. The couple didn't just leave the monarchy, they rejected everything it stood for in terms of restraint, privacy, and keeping family matters behind closed doors. What followed wasn't simply independence. It was a complete reimagining of their public role, built on American celebrity culture rather than British royal tradition. They chose autonomy over institutional support, profit over protocol, and public candor over private discretion. But the scrutiny Meghan faces today didn't begin with the move to America. The pattern of controversy that surrounds her traces back years earlier to moments when she was still a working member of the royal family, trying to find her place within an institution that operates according to rules that can seem arbitrary and suffocating to outsiders. The first significant misstep, at least according to royal protocol, came in 2017 before her engagement was even official. Meghan gave an interview to Vanity Fair and spoke openly about her relationship with Harry. She confirmed they were in love. For anyone familiar with royal culture, this was jarring. Royals and those close to them don't comment on romantic relationships before formal announcements. Then came smaller moments that collectively created a perception that Meghan didn't quite fit into the choreography of royal life. In 2018, during a public outing, she was captured on video stepping into a vehicle ahead of Queen Elizabeth. The protocol on this point is absolutely rigid. No one moves before the monarch ever under any circumstances. Public displays of affection became another point of contention. British royal couples are expected to maintain composed distance during public engagements. Harry and Meghan didn't follow that script. They held hands constantly. They touched each other and exchanged looks that felt intimate and unguarded. To critics, it looked like yet another refusal to conform. As time went on, the conversation shifted from protocol breaches to character questions. Former colleagues and staff members began speaking out, and their accounts painted a picture that was often quite different from the public image. One former media staffer described working with Meghan as emotionally difficult, claiming the environment could turn cold without warning. These accounts weren't universal, though. Some people who worked with Meghan had completely different experiences. Producer Jane Marie publicly rejected the negative characterizations, describing Meghan as genuinely kind and pleasant to work with. The stark contrast between these accounts made it difficult to know what to believe. In October 2022, Meghan addressed some of these characterizations directly on her podcast. She talked about being labeled difficult and connected it to broader stereotypes. She framed her approach as setting clear boundaries, arguing that being straightforward shouldn't be characterized as being demanding. This is where the Meghan Markle story becomes almost impossible to pin down definitively. Every incident has multiple interpretations. To some people, she's confident and modern. To others, she's difficult and dismissive. The truth probably exists somewhere between these extremes. But regardless of where the truth actually lies, the consequences of this divided perception are no longer just about Meghan herself. They've extended to Harry and most significantly to Archie and Lilibet, two children who now find themselves at the center of questions about legitimacy and belonging. Even with Harry and Meghan no longer working as royals, the story of their children's status within the monarchy is far from settled. In fact, for Archie and Lilibet, things may be entering an even more complicated phase. When Queen Elizabeth died in September 2022, the rules changed overnight. With a new monarch came a quiet reshuffling of positions, and suddenly Harry and Meghan's children moved up the line of succession without anyone having to do anything. They were no longer great-grandchildren of the sovereign, they became grandchildren of the king. Under long-standing royal convention, this shift matters enormously. By tradition, the grandchildren of the reigning monarch are entitled to be styled as prince and princess. This isn't about popularity or approval, it's written into the legal framework that governs royal titles, which means that technically, Archie and Lilibet should now be Prince Archie and Princess Lilibet, unless King Charles decides otherwise. Meghan has suggested for years that her children's titles were never guaranteed. During her interview with Oprah Winfrey, she revealed that conversations had taken place behind palace doors about potentially altering the rules to prevent Archie from becoming a prince. According to Meghan, these discussions happened while she was still pregnant with her first child. She framed the issue as deeply troubling, claiming concerns were raised about how dark her baby's skin might be and what that would mean for the institution. The legal framework governing these titles goes back more than a century. In 1917, King George V issued protocols stating that the children and grandchildren of the reigning monarch are entitled to royal titles, while great-grandchildren are not. That's why, at birth, Archie and Lilibet were styled without prince or princess designations. At the time, it followed the rulebook exactly, but the moment Charles became king, that justification disappeared. Now, Archie and Lilibet sit as grandchildren of the monarch, and under the existing framework, the titles are theirs by default. Still, nothing about this family is ever straightforward. Charles has made it clear that he wants a slimmed-down monarchy. Fewer working royals, less sprawl, more focus on the direct line of succession. While he hasn't publicly spelled out exactly how far he plans to take that vision, the implication is obvious. Not everyone gets to stay in the spotlight, and not everyone gets to keep everything they're entitled to. If Charles wanted to prevent Archie from becoming a prince and Lilibet from becoming a princess, he would have to take a deliberate step. He would need to issue what's called a letters patent, a formal legal document that overrides convention and redraws the boundaries of who gets titles and who doesn't. It's not something done lightly. Once issued, it sends a message that's impossible to soften or walk back. For now, no such document has been announced. As things currently stand, Archie and Lilibet remain 6th and 7th in line to the throne. Ahead of them sits Prince William, followed by his 3 children George, Charlotte and Louis, and then their father Harry. From a distance, it looks orderly and predictable, but beneath the surface, it's anything but stable. This isn't just about titles or ceremonial designations, it's about identity, belonging, and whether 2 children growing up thousands of miles away in California will be allowed to carry the symbols of a system their parents walked away from. For Archie and Lilibet, the door isn't fully closed, at least not yet. Tradition is technically on their side, but tradition only holds until a king decides it doesn't. When it comes to reconciliation within the family, the prospects look equally uncertain. 5 years after walking away from royal life, Harry remains fundamentally disconnected from his relatives. Not quietly distant, not temporarily estranged, but fully removed. Despite public concern around his father's health, the emotional gap between Harry and the House of Windsor has only widened. Since the couple's exit in 2020, Harry's relationship with King Charles has been reduced to brief, functional contact at best. Even their short reunion following Charles's cancer diagnosis failed to signal any real improvement. Royal observers describe that meeting as driven by obligation rather than genuine affection, a moment rooted in duty rather than any attempt to rebuild what was lost. That fracture extends beyond the king. Harry is reportedly no longer in contact with Prince William or Kate Middleton, effectively cutting himself off from the core of the future monarchy. Christmas was spent apart. Silence has become the norm. From the monarchy's standpoint, preserving stability and safeguarding the institution's future outweigh any personal reconciliation. On Meghan's side, experts are even more definitive. The relationship with her father, Thomas Markle, is widely viewed as beyond repair. Years of public fallout, media involvement, and failed communication attempts have left nothing solid to return to. Even his recent health crisis hasn't changed that assessment. Royal commentators have described the situation as irreparable, pointing to a pattern of conflict that never found resolution. The breakdown traces back to the months before Meghan's wedding, when staged paparazzi photos triggered a collapse in trust between father and daughter. What followed wasn't one dramatic argument, but a slow and painful disengagement. Attempts to reconnect reportedly failed. Messages went unanswered. Over time, distance became protection. Thomas has never met Meghan's children. No photos have been shared. No introductions were made. Royal experts have framed the situation on both sides as emotionally immovable. From their view, genuine peace is unlikely, not because of a lack of opportunity, but because the damage runs too deep. In response to growing speculation, a spokesperson for the Duke and Margaret, Duchess of Sussex, has dismissed much of the coverage as speculative, stressing that the couple will not comment publicly on private family matters. But for many observers, the silence says as much as any statement could. At this point, the pattern is clear. Illness has not softened the divide. Time has not closed the gap. What remains are relationships reshaped by exposure, resentment, and choices that cannot be undone. For Harry and Meghan, reconciliation isn't being delayed. According to those watching closest, it may already be behind them. And for Archie and Lilibet, that means growing up in a world where their place within one of the most powerful families on earth remains uncertain, contested, and possibly subject to change at any moment.